They told you money is simple. Work hard, save, trust the system. But then your groceries jump, your rent jumps, your wages don't. And somehow, banks and governments always find trillions when the right people are in danger. So here's the question nobody wants you to ask. What if the lost gold of Babylon was never about gold at all, but about a technique? A method to control society by controlling credit. A method so old it predates coins, yet it's still running your life through inflation, debt, and job instability. Because Babylon didn't just stack treasure. It perfected a trick, turned trust into currency, and then turned currency into obedience. And if you think that sounds ancient, wait until you see the modern version. It's cleaner, it's legal, it's global. And it doesn't need a crown. Quick community check-in, where are you watching from? And if you want the unfiltered truth, the stuff that doesn't fit into polite headlines, subscribe. Because the next part connects Babylon to the machine behind modern money. Let's start with the official story. Babylon, around the early second millennium BCE, becomes a powerhouse not just through armies, but through administration taxes, records, contracts. Temples and palaces weren't only religious and political centers, they were financial hubs. Back then, money wasn't paper. It was silver by weight, grain by measure, and most importantly, credit. Clay tablets tracked who owed what to whom and when. Interest wasn't a rumor, it was policy. Under Hammurabis around 1750 BCE, laws codified lending terms, collateral rules, and penalties. The system wasn't chaotic, it was engineered. Now pause. When a temple can store wealth, issue loans, and enforce repayment, it becomes more than a building. It becomes a trust factory. People deposit because the temple is safe. The temple lends because lending creates power. The borrower pays interest because the alternative is exclusion or worse. Sound familiar? Because fast forward, your bank isn't just holding your money. It's using your deposit base, your trust, as the foundation for credit creation. The institution that can expand and contract credit doesn't merely observe the economy, it steers it. Babylon also learned something else. Controlling money means controlling time. Debt is time, interest is time with a price tag. When harvests fail or wars disrupt trade, debt doesn't politely pause, it compounds. And when too many people get crushed, rulers sometimes declare debt jubilees, not out of kindness, but to prevent society from collapsing. Sound familiar? When modern debt loads get too heavy, we don't call it jubilee. We call it restructuring. We call it emergency facilities. We call it quantitative easing. Different words. Same pressure valve. Then comes the empire layer. Babylon doesn't exist in isolation. Trade routes spread, conquest reshuffle power. By 539 BCE, Babylon falls to Persia. The rulers change, but the machinery of record keeping and extraction stays. Empires don't just inherit territory, they inherit the ledger. Sound familiar? Because modern empires aren't always flags on maps. Sometimes they're currencies. Sometimes they're settlement systems. Sometimes they're the invisible pipes that decide who gets liquidity when the world panics. And here's the part that should make your stomach tighten. Babylon's gold, its real treasure, was the ability to make the population live inside a financial reality the elite could rewrite. Not with swords first, with credit, collateral, and control of the ledger. And the modern parallel is not a cute metaphor, it's a direct upgrade. Now for the twist. Most people think the modern money story is governments print money. That's the cartoon version, the children's book. The adult version is uglier because the real engine of modern money isn't the mint, it's private credit. And the most powerful form of it isn't even fully domestic. It's offshore. In the decades after World War II, a strange creature grows in the shadows of the Eurodollar system. Despite the name, it's not European money, it's US dollars created and lent outside the United States by banks that aren't bound by the same constraints, operating through correspondent accounts, money markets, and balance sheet magic. That offshore dollar market becomes the bloodstream of global trail, shipping, corporate debt, emerging market funding. Everyone wants dollars because dollars settle the world. And here's where it turns Babylonian. Once you can create dollar, like claims outside the visible perimeter, you can expand credit faster than regulators can measure it. Then you stack derivatives on top, promises on promises, until the system looks stable, right up until it isn't. So when the world hits a panic, who backstops this offshore dollar universe? Not a temple, not a king. A central bank, through a tool most people never think about, never vote on, and barely understand. And the moment you see who gets saved first, the entire story changes. Stay with me, because the receipt is wilder than you think. Let's make this simple, because the complexity is the camouflage. In modern economies, the majority of money you use is bank deposits, created when banks make loans. Many estimates commonly cited in central bank education materials put this at around 80–90% of broad money being deposit money rather than physical cash. So the core mechanism isn't printing, it's credit creation. That's already a power shift, because it means money is born with a leash interest. Every new dollar created as debt demands more dollars in the future. If the real economy can't keep up, something breaks, or someone gets bailed out. Babylon would recognize that instantly. Now imagine a bank in London or the Caribbean or Hong Kong creating a dollar deposit liability. We owe you dollars, even though it's outside U.S. banking regulation. It can do this because it has access to dollar settlement through correspondent banking networks and wholesale funding markets. This becomes enormous. It's not secret in the sense of a single hidden document. It's secret in the sense that it's too technical for mainstream attention and therefore politically untouchable. Here's the emotional truth. The public argues about deficits while the real money machine hums offshore. Now add collateral. In wholesale finance, the system runs on high-quality collateral, government bonds, top-grade securities. But here's the trick: collateral can be reused. If you give Bank A a treasury bond as collateral, Bank A may pledge that same bond to Bank B, and Bank B may pledge it again. This is rehypothecation, and it's a multiplier, like taking one gold bar and issuing 5 warehouse receipts against it, hoping nobody shows up at once. That is Babylon in a suit. And the emotional core is this: it creates the illusion of safety while increasing fragility. It's parasitic finance, extracting stability premiums without building real resilience. Now layer derivatives on top: interest rate swaps, currency swaps, credit default swaps. These instruments can hedge risk, yes, but they can also manufacture exposure at scale. The notional value of global derivatives has hovered in the hundreds of trillions. The BIS has often reported totals on the order of 600 trillion in notional amounts in recent years. Notional isn't the same as money at risk, but it signals something terrifying. The lattice of promises is so vast that when it shakes, everyone suddenly cares about everyone else's solvency. This is where moral hazard becomes a strategy. Because if the system is too interconnected to fail, then the biggest players can gamble harder. They privatize the gains and outsource the tail risk to the public. Here's what happens in a crisis: everyone wants dollars now. Dollar funding markets freeze, offshore banks scramble, corporations rush to draw credit lines, emerging markets bleed reserves. The world experiences a dollar shortage. But wait, how can the world be short of dollars if the US can print them? Because the real bottleneck isn't paper. It's wholesale dollar funding and settlement confidence inside the shadow system. This is why crises feel like suffocation. The oxygen is liquidity. Now we arrive at the modern temple door. Central bank swap lines are agreements where the U.S. Federal Reserve provides dollars to other central banks in exchange for their currency, temporarily, so those central banks can lend dollars into their banking systems. This tool became crucial in 2008 when global dollar funding snapped. The Fed swap lines ballooned. The outstanding amounts peaked around $580 billion in late 2008. Then again in 2020, during the pandemic panic, swap lines surged, peaking around $440 billion. Read that again: hundreds of billions. Not debated in your household, not voted on in your neighborhood, but decisive in preventing a global dollar plumbing collapse. Is that inherently evil? The tool can prevent catastrophic contagion. But here's the Babylonian problem: once markets believe the backstop is inevitable, the incentive is to build a system that requires the backstop. That's moral hazard, institutionalized, because gold used to be the visible constraint. If you had 100 bars, you couldn't issue 10,000 claims forever without eventually being exposed. But when the constraint becomes accounting, cross-border settlement, and derivatives netting, when the gold becomes confidence, You can stretch the system until it becomes a religion. It works because everyone agrees it works, until they don't. And then the priests, today's technocrats, perform the ritual emergency facilities, swap lines, guarantees, collateral expansions. The public hears, "was saved the economy." But what often happens is, "was saved the architecture of claims," and then ask the public to pay the inflationary and fiscal consequences over time. Let's pin the stakes with hard anchors. 1750 BCE, Hammurabi codifies lending and penalties, proving credit control is ancient statcraft. 539 BCE, Babylon falls, but the ledger logic survives regime change. 1971, the U.S. ends gold convertibility. Gold at 35 fils becomes a symbol of a constraint removed, and modern credit expands into a new era. 2008, Fed swap lines peak around $580 billion, revealing the offshore dollar system's dependence on a public backstop. Low $600 trillion. Derivatives notional scale signals how massive the promised web has become. If you want a sixth, global shadow banking has been estimated by international monitors at tens of trillions of dollars in size in recent years, often cited in the 62+ trillion range, depending on definition. That's not a sideshow. That's a second financial universe. Step 90, the engineered collapse accusation. What's real? What's the vibe now? Here's where people whisper, conspiracy. Is there a single villain twirling a mustache? Usually not. But systems can behave like conspiracies without a boardroom meeting, because incentives align. If profit comes from expanding leverage in good times, and survival comes from public rescue in bad times, the rational strategy is to expand the offshore dollar machine when nobody's scared. Wrap it in derivatives so risk looks managed. Reuse collateral until stability becomes a mirage. Then when it breaks, demand salvation because collapse would hurt everyone. That's not an accident. That's designed by incentive. And the negative consequence, the big reveal we started with, is permanent. The public lives under a money regime where discipline applies downward, Dell's austerity, layoffs, higher bills, and mercy applies upward, liquidity, facilities, backstops. Babylon used temples and tablets. Modern Babylon uses swap lines and spreadsheets, different tools, same power. Here's the warning. Babylon was regional. Its collapses were brutal, but contained. Modern finance is instant, global, and synchronized. One broken funding market can ripple across continents before your morning coffee cools. And the next time the system seizes, the rescue won't look like a parade of gold. It'll look like invisible numbers moved at speed, followed by years where ordinary people pay through higher living costs, higher taxes, weaker purchasing power, and tighter opportunity. This is the oldest human pattern: denial. We deny the machine because it's complicated. We outsource understanding because life is busy. And then we act surprised when institutions built on borrowed time demand more of our future. So don't just watch this like a history lesson. Treat it like a map. If you felt that tightening in your chest when you heard 580 billion or 600 trillion, good. That's your instincts noticing the scale. Now I want to hear from you. What part of your life feels most squeezed? Rent, groceries, debt, job security? Drop it in the comments. Share this with someone who still thinks money printing is the whole story. And subscribe if you want more of the unfiltered truth. Because the real question is, are we wiser now or walking the same path in better suits?